Hey lovelies, I'm Sarah Scott and this is episode number 2 of the new Off the Pole podcast, where I interview a variety of interesting creatures to help us train smart so we can dance more. This episode features flips master and fellow podcaster Mr. Shane Godliman. Shane travels around the UK teaching workshops and is known for his dynamic style on the pole and getting people who are scared of flips, like me, to give them a go. We get into training with structure versus play and getting over the fear of flips. Hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Welcome, Shane. Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thanks for having.
So yeah, just for the people who might not know who you are, madness if they don't know who you are, but maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, a bit about your background, and
Yeah, okay. So I'm Shane. I'm 26. I've been poling for about 4 years now, I think. I started, I guess, getting into pole was quite random for me. I was doing a lot of personal training, so I guess background wise, like I started off personal training. I got into like calisthenics and was teaching a lot of like handstands and gymnastic strength based stuff and this, that, and the other. And I did I was doing a PT session with a girl who wanted to learn about handstands. And she said, "Oh, you should come down to pole. You should come to this place. You'll love it. You'll love the instructor, this and that," which was Tricksters in Bradford. So I went up there to like an open session and just had a little play and did a couple spins, and that was it.
Probably irritatingly good at it. Yeah. Everyone was
giving
you evil eyes in the corner.
I did get quite a few evil eyes, but I'd already been doing I was trying to learn a flag already, so I kind of had like a rubbish INX kind of already down and stuff. So yeah, I kind of. But you know me, I stick to what I'm good at. So.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Just as long as you can keep it a secret, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So kind of came to pole, and so how have you found it since then? Like, have you found that your tricks have changed? Have you found that your development has changed? Did you start going to class, or did you teach yourself? Bit of a mix?
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, when I started, it was more of like an open session vibe. It wasn't really like. I don't think I haven't spent a lot of time in classes per se. So I've done like workshops, and I've done. You go to jams and people help you out, go to open sessions and there's people kind of shadowing, as it were. So it's kind of a mix of a lot of things in terms of how I've learned. I don't know if my style has changed. I mean, I guess coming in, I didn't really know what my style was. So I think that's what drew me to pole was it seemed like there was scope for me to kind of learn a lot more about kind of who I was and the way I wanted to move and stuff. It just seemed a little bit more versatile. Like at the time I was doing a lot more like street workout stuff, and it got a bit stagnant for me. It seemed like everyone was doing the same thing the same way without really much care for how it went down, whereas with pole it was a lot different. So yeah, I think I've just been kind of exploring, to be honest, in terms of like my style, and I was very inspired by like the Russians and stuff when I started. Obviously coming in, everyone was kind of like, yeah, I watched Felix Kane and Sarah Scott, and I was like, I can't do any of that stuff. So
you can do everything.
check these guys out. I'm gonna go check these guys out.
I post something and you're just like, oh yeah, now I can do it with straight legs and straight arms and add a flip on the end. And I'm like, Shane, stop it. Just keep it simple. Stop making me look bad. No, that's fine. I'm only joking. So in a general pole training session, like how would you prepare for it? Do you have a plan? Do you lay it out beforehand, or is it more kind of a creative, kind of exploring, as you say?
I massively alternate between the two, actually, which is not a particularly useful answer. I think I prefer exploring. I don't think I enjoy being like feeling like I'm stuck in this. I have to do this certain set of exercises or whatever. The routine was the word I was struggling for there. But at the same time, I noticed that if I just spend all my time just messing around and playing, the results start to sort of taper off a little bit. So I might kind of find a new little element or angle, as it were, that I want to kind of play with. But if I really want to make improvements in terms of results of my training, in terms of strength and things like that, I have to be under structure. But then if I spend too long under structure, I get really bored of training. And so I tend to vaguely, probably sort of 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off.
Yeah, kind of alternate between the two.
Yeah.
I can see that. Do you feel like you have a loss of motivation? Do you feel like you have to really push yourself to go training, or do you always pretty much feel like you have that drive to keep kind of setting goals and smashing them?
No, definitely. I definitely hit all kinds of ruts, every every rut imaginable. Um, yeah, I guess it depends on sort of where that energy is coming from. Like a lot of people like to do competitions and things like that because they feel like it gives them something to train for. And I guess sometimes if I've got something to train for in terms of I've got a trick that I'm working towards specifically or a combo that I'm trying to get Instagram worthy or whatever.
Shh, that just happens naturally, remember? You do it first time and then you just post it. No editing occurs. It's all fine.
Yeah. So, but sometimes I do find myself kind of thinking, why am I, why am I kind of doing this? I definitely struggle with dips in motivation and things, and well, I guess there's loads of different reasons, different times in your life and stuff. But no, it's not. It's definitely not a consistent thing. And even if it does become consistent, it'll fade out eventually. Just got to ride it for long enough.
Out. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like a massive truck just pulled past. I don't know if you can hear all the beeping that's going on outside my industrial unit, which is helpful. But anyway, have you found that you've had any specific challenges that you've had to overcome in your training journey?
Yeah, I guess kind of like we talked about earlier, where you've got to find the kind of style and structure that works for you. Because I think when you start something new, especially when it's as complex as pole, you kind of start to just got look to the left, look to the right, and I'll just do whatever everyone else is doing. So that's been a struggle. Kind of finding out what actually does work best for me, and just what we were talking about then, having that kind of that base motivation to create a really consistent routine and things. I think that's probably one of the things I have to really pay attention to, is like trying to build as much consistency as I can. And then all the normal mental blocks, like doing flips and things. Obviously, everyone assumes I'm some sort of high functioning sociopath that doesn't register any level of fear, but it's not the case. So I deal with that. And then sometimes,
we did definitely have a few questions in the group when I posted that you were coming on, and a few people did ask about the fear of flips and whether it does ever go away. I mean, are there steps that you take beforehand, or is it just something that you've learned to deal with?
Both. I do have a bit of a routine in terms of, well, not a routine, but I try and be kind of conscious of my physiology and how I kind of feel and what my breathing is like and this and how I'm standing and things like that before I'm about to go and do something. I like to try and create a bit of consistency in that sense. I think that comes from like a basketball background, where when you do free throws, you always have a routine because it's the same shot so I create a similar little, it might just be like take a deep breath, relax your shoulders and just shake your arms out a little, or just whatever it is that makes me feel good. But as well, it does just kind of get better or whatever over time. I think it's more about relative context. So it's like a backflip for me isn't scary because I've done thousands of them, but a split drop is, because I don't do any of those, right? So it's sort of, the fear is quite a crude word in a lot of senses, I think. It helps to be a bit more specific, but generally speaking, yeah, everyone deals with it. I definitely deal with it in relation to some of the flips and things that I
Well, I've done a private with you myself, and I'm terrified of flips. And you're very calming. you put up with me very well. I think knowing the mechanics of what you're doing rather than just throwing yourself into it or going for it, I think people think that they need more energy to make the flip feel easier. But actually, if you break down the mechanics of it, it's very precise. And when you know how to do it properly, that actually takes a lot of the fear away because you know the control of it. And that I found very helpful with your teaching. So.
I think that's a really good point. That is really important, that awareness of I think in terms of when I'm like coaching, I try and think about instilling a level of awareness and of accountability with what I'm doing, because like you say, if you don't know the ins and outs of the techniques of what you're doing, there's just no scope for you being able to like adjust or understand like the movement and things. And then you also got to kind of understand that it is still you that's doing it. So like you talk about like sort of me being calming in this, but that's my impact on you, as opposed to what a lot of people expect is for me to just put one hand here and just kind of fling you over. Or like say you kind of shut your eyes and go for it, which, you know, maybe you're right for like one or two, but it's not going to give you much kind of build on. So it's a very good point.
So I'm not trying to answer your own question.
No.
Well, actually, Shane, this is what you feel about it. So you say you came from like a calisthenics background, or you were kind of getting into that, and obviously you said you came from basketball as well, which is very dynamic. Is there any of that kind of in regards to kind of transferring skills? Is there anything that you can recommend to pole dancers that they could do to help train to do that? Because obviously we don't necessarily come from calisthenics in basketball, but those skills obviously have helped you along the way. So is there anything that you could recommend?
Yeah, I guess from the basketball standpoint, I guess I haven't really thought about it in terms of movement too much. I think I bring some of the philosophy, the coaching stuff that I've learned from playing basketball over into my teaching. But actually, as I say that, there is, I guess, broadly speaking, anything where you're kind of doing a lot of agility work and a lot of quick movements is going to help you with any other movements where you're moving sort of faster than you're generally used to. As another common thing that I come across, especially with like flips and things, it seems like you're just moving so fast I can't register anything, which is true to a certain extent, but realistically, again, it's fast as a relative term. You're moving faster than you usually do, and you have plenty of systems and processes in your body that are working millions of times faster than you can ever do a backflip. So there's plenty of stuff in there to be aware of, but if you've never been exposed to it, you're not going to be able to kind of tap into that. So I think from the basketball side of things, I like using some of the speed, some of the footwork, some of the kind of body placement stuff. And then from the calisthenics, obviously that was more strength based. So I use a lot of the techniques from that, but it's nothing interesting. Like, all the best stuff is so boring.
I know, it's always the small muscles and the small tiny exercises that don't actually look like you're doing anything, and they're like the key to unlock everything. So yeah, no, I do know where you're coming from with that. But I mean, do you train just pole now? I know we see quite a lot of you doing kind of flips and things at gymnastics into foam pits and Ninja Warrior stuff. But do you go to a gym? Do you do any weights? Do you do any specific like body weight sessions, or do you find that it comes naturally from your other training regimes?
So I don't have like a specific answer for this, which kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, where I'm kind of in and out, 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off type thing. So it depends when you catch me. I think I wouldn't have the kind of base abilities that I have now without following a structure. But having said that, since I've started pole, I have been doing less kind of structured specific bodyweight workouts. So before I was doing sort of 3 sessions a week, like 45-hour sessions a week. And that was my whole focus. And then I guess as I started getting into pole and started advancing my skills and stuff, I was applying all of it anyway. Like it's kind of hard not to be strong in pole anyway. Like even if you're not trying to, you're gonna get a bit stronger anyway. So I was using it all. So even though I haven't necessarily like progressed a ton, I've been able to at least maintain what I'd built through the structure. But like I said earlier, I think if I'm serious about making strength gains, then I have to go in for structure. I would like to think that I could just mess about and do a load of pole and I would just be massive and strong and that, but it just doesn't really work like that. And I'll be really lopsided because I can't flag on the other side. It's too hard.
Don't tell people that. Just be like, you choose not to, but you could if you want.
I could if I would really like to.
Yeah, if your life depended on it, you probably could do a better flag than most of us. God damn you, Shane. But yeah, we'll pretend like you're going to be bad on your bad side. Do you have, if you couldn't do pole ever again, like is there one exercise that you would go to? Or is there one exercise that you're like, I love doing that alongside pole?
No, not one. It's too hard for me to pick one. Again, it kind of, you could interview me like once a month for the next 12 and get 12 different answers. Like, because I think that just with where I'm at in my life, to be honest, I'm just exploring, I'm having fun and just kind of working out what does and doesn't. So yeah, I'm trying all kinds of different movement styles and dance styles and strength training, this, that and the other. I'll just kind of mess about with things and So I think I'd struggle to pick one unless I just went gymnastics, and I feel like that's cheating because it's a bit of everything in there. Yeah.
Do you do any other kind of do you do mobility work or flexibility work? Like, do you really put aside any time to do like rest or active recovery, anything like that, or do you feel like your body recovers quite well? Do you don't have to spend too much time on it? Is this not a good question because you're smirking already, like you probably should do more, but you don't do a lot, so you don't want to bring it up. Like, Sarah, I stretch all the time. My splits are amazing.
I'm thinking, yeah, you're going to post this in your Off the Pole group with your mobility programs attached to it.
No, well, I will post it there. Yeah, that's completely what I'm going to do. But there's no judgment. I'm just interested.
Well. No, I don't do as much mobility as I should. I do more mobility than I do like normal classic stretching. I think the stretching thing for me is it's just boring and it hurts and it's really hard for me to motivate myself to do it.
Well, that's honest. Which is, at least that's honest. I appreciate that.
It's honest. It's not a particularly good excuse, but that is just how I feel. I think with mobility stuff, I tend to build it into warm-ups and things. So even though I do like to kind of just run into a pole studio and act like a 6-year-old child, I know that I don't benefit from that. Get little tweaks and stuff, and I'm creeping up towards the mysterious age, and I think I'm starting to be a bit more aware of that. So I kind of build stuff in, but again it kind of changes. I don't have specific exercises. I do what feels like I'm supposed to be doing. I'll have something sort of shoulder open-y and something sort of spine open-y in a broad sense.
Shoulder open-y and spine open-y.
Yes.
I want to see videos of those. I want to show those on Shane's shoulder open-y exercises.
Not that you can open a spine, but I'm sure you the listeners know what I meant.
Open-y, we get what you mean. It's all good.
Yeah.
And last question, is there anything like final words of advice you could give to the Off the Pole Facebook group, as you know that I'm going to be posting it there?
Advice.
Thinking of like the motto that I'm trying to bring to the Off the Pole community now is that we're trying to train smarter so that we can dance more. So the whole point of pole is that we enjoy it and we love it and we want to spend more time on the pole. Yeah. But if there's a few things that we could chuck into our training that's going to help us do that, like bring longevity to our training, like if there's a couple of things that. So it doesn't have to be one thing, not pressuring. Yeah. If it is one thing, that's fine. But there's one thing that you could either maybe tell yourself when you first started pole, or something that you really like to include into your training now that ensures that you'll be able to train for longer. Something like that. Yeah.
I think that my answer probably wouldn't be sort of exercise based. It as you were saying that, it reminded me of what my basketball coach used to say all the time. He used to say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And he meant it in terms of like running suicides, but also...
I don't even know what that is. It sounds horrible.
It's awful. Just line drills, back, forth, back, forth. Anyway, I think the idea of that whole sort of, you've got to fall in love with the process. And like we said about before, like most of the important stuff's really boring. Like if longevity is the biggest key, then you've got to have the mindset for it, really. Like the excitable buzz that you get from starting out something isn't always is rarely going to carry you through to like long-term success. So I think the sooner that you can get kind of stuck into some of the more boring stuff and just kind of square yourself with the idea that more than anything you have to get stuff done consistently rather than needing it to be perfect all the time and this and that. And
that's good. That's a good piece of advice. That's very good. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, answering some of our questions. Much appreciated. And I will link down to where everyone can find you and stuff like that in the show notes and on the bottom of the video. So thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Shane Godliman. You can read the transcript on my blog page on the Off the Pole website and watch the interview on the Off the Pole YouTube channel.